All right, welcome back to Keepin' It Comic, and we're jumping back into Ultimate Spider-Man, where Uncle Ben and Jonah Jameson are following up on their lead from the last issue, which leads them to find out the truth behind Stane/Stark Industries, the truth behind Wilson Fisk, and the ones that are controlling Fisk, and a little bit of a confrontation here with Harry Osborn, the Green Goblin, that allows them to find out way more information. So this starts off with Ben and Jonah here taking a little trip to Long Island, New York for some golf in hopes of bumping into an interesting party that is connected to Wilson Fisk. Now, this person is James Wesley, who is a lawyer who we know from the main 616 universe is usually seen here hanging around the Kingpin. So I guess it's good to see that they're keeping it the same here in the Ultimate Universe. Now, what they want to talk about here is Stane/Stark Industries and the sale of it, which of course, as we know, was sold to Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy, but Ben and Jonah do not know that yet. Now, when they asked James if this was his signature that was on the papers for the sale, James asked the question like, yo, where did you get this? Which basically confirms this man's guilt. So Ben lets him know that he knows that this paperwork is authorizing the sale of Stane/Stark to an offshore company that's owned by another offshore company, and on and on and on it goes. But James, playing coy, just simply says, I'm sorry, I can't imagine how I could help. So Ben, with a quick retort, says, think your boss might be willing to? Which is basically a way of informing James that he knows who he works for. So James tells him, all I know is that this paperwork appears to tell the story of someone removing themselves from anything having to do with Stane/Stark. And if that's what you're looking for, then you need to look somewhere else, which is basically a not so clear way of him saying you might want to look into Harry Osborn, but also you might not want to mess with the other person, being Fisk, who is involved, which we know because next James tells him that he needs to look into his files to confirm that the paperwork matches. And then Ben asks him, hey, can you look into it tomorrow? But then James says something very cryptic. He's like, oh, tomorrow is promised to no one, especially for those brave souls who choose to swim in deep water. Now, before the conversation here could continue, James' security comes over to Ben and Jonah, telling them it's time for them to leave. So Ben finally says, okay, maybe some other time then. So then James replies, we'll see, won't we? Which basically is a threat, and now we know that the boys from the paper will have a target on their back. So 1 week later at the paper, the boys are starting to piece together the companies that Stane/Stark was sold to. Now on their board, they had the TSSC, Dinos, Ash/S Securities, U65, and then the list goes on and on. So what's been going on here is that the company has been sold and resold every month between all of these shell corporations. The paperwork usually takes about 30 days, but within that 30 days, the company gets sold again. So they realize that all the assets are being split into two different companies, one being S/S Securities and the U65 company. One being dormant with zero activity, the S/S they realized could be a moniker here for Stane/Stark. And when they looked into the U65 company, it turns out it's owned by Oscorp. So this leads them to take a visit here over to Oscorp Industries. Now at Oscorp, just in case you forgot, the day-to-day activities here are essentially run by Harry's wife, Gwen Stacy. And from previous issues, we also know that the paper, the company being run by Ben and Jonah, the one that is investigating all this stuff, well, that was funded by Gwen Stacy via Oscorp, which she reminds them of as they take a seat. So they try to approach the situation here delicately, right? They're like, listen, I do not want to upset Gwen, but then Gwen mentions, she's like, I am not delicate, and trust me, you will not make me upset. We'll see. So they get right into it, right? They mention how one of their reporters is working on this story, by the way, which of course is a lie because it's them working on it. But they do tell her what they have found, how Stane/Stark was sold for cheap, then sold and resold to several companies, and how one of those companies is under the Oscorp umbrella, which implies that they own it. And so you can see that it obviously irritates Gwen, right? Because she asks the question, well, what's the name of this reporter who's working on this story? So Ben is like, interesting question. And then he pulls out that old school recording device, clearly not a smartphone, Because I'm like, I don't even know what the thing is even called. And he's like, I got some questions myself. Like, who arranged the deal to buy the company? Why are you working so hard to hide that they own Stain/Stark? What happened to all the technology that was there? Why does this all coincide with people suddenly flying through the air in armored suits? And if there are the ones that secretly finance all of it? So Jonah is like, care to comment? So remember when Gwen said, I won't get upset? Well, nah, that did not last long, because she's like, sure, I want my bleep money back. And it's fair to say that she probably kicked him out of the office after that one. So later on, right, Uncle Ben is at a weekly family dinner right now with the Parkers. So MJ lets Ben know that Gwen called her. And being that Gwen is their PR manager and the reason the paper company got their funding was due to her small business relationship through Gwen, so to speak, Ben lets MJ know that they're working on a big story, which led to them meeting with Gwen. Although MJ doesn't know the details yet, so she knows though that she's pissed off. That's all she knows based on their conversation. So Ben thought that MJ might be concerned because Peter just came on board as their photographer, and with her threatening to take her money back, that could be a big deal. But MJ's like, nah, we good, especially considering that she's lining up some advertisers so that there's other money that is out there that could be coming in. The concern that MJ has is that if they release a story too early, that they could impact things. But then Ben is like, listen, when the story is ready to be published, I'm gonna publish the story, which then leads MJ to ask the question, well, since Gwen is a client too, how long do we got? So Ben mentions, he's like, you got a week. So now this is where things start to get really interesting, because Harry Osborn shows up to the paper to have a little discussion with Jonah and Ben. And when he gets inside, apparently they had a bet on how long and who would show up after they gave them that deadline. And Jonah won because he was the one that took the under here, which Harry doesn't take very well to, because he's like, I don't see this as a game, guys. So he wants to know like what they need to do for them to not write the story about Oscorp. But the guys are like, yo, this is not a story about Oscorp at all. Ben explains how he has a hard time believing that they bought and hid Stain/Stark with bad intentions, especially considering that his wife and Harry's dad died at the same time. So Harry's like, well, what story are you writing? So they clearly let him know that they think that Oscorp took existing Iron Man technology, put a new coat of paint on it, and shot it up real nice for a new show, which of course, as we know, is how Harry got his Green Goblin suit, and later on how Spider-Man got his own suit as well. All of that was more specifically courtesy of Tony Stark, who Jonah and Ben, by the way, still think are dead. So they come out and say it, right? They're like, they think it's either Harry or Gwen that is in the suit, the Green Goblin suit. So Harry is like, I suggest you leave my wife out of this, while he flashes the suit coming on over his arms, which once again, man, apparently they had a bet on that as well. Jonah thought it would be Gwen that was in the suit. So Ben is like, nah, I won. I knew it was gonna be Harry. So once again, that pisses off Harry. Man, this dude, listen, Harry's never been able to take a joke, right? Dude is like, enough of this, man. So you figured out that I am the Goblin, which puts me in a very dangerous spot. So he says, he's like, I guess the question is, what am I going to do about it? So then Ben is like, Jonah, it seems Mr. Osborn thinks we're writing a story about who the Green Goblin is. Is that what we're doing? So then Jonah's like, no, Ben, I don't think we are, which really infuriates Harry this time. So Harry has basically had enough of this crap. He's like, stop screwing around. Last warning, what are you two up to? So finally, the real question that they have is, being that they know that Fisk enabled the sale to Oscorp, that Goblin and Spider-Man have been waging war against Fisk, the question is, why would Fisk sell the thing you're using to destroy him? Valid question. So Harry enlightens him that it's because Fisk doesn't know that there were hidden records of what Fisk and the people who control Fisk have been up to for decades. He then pulls out a drive from his jacket pocket. He lets them know, these are the people who killed your wife, Ben. And then he hands them a drive and tells them, this is everything Oscorp has on record of the man who made this world. And he's talking about the maker, right? The way that it is. His council that's running it, the Maker's Council. What really happened with the Starks and Fisk. If you have the courage to write it, it will grow. Do you think you are up for this? So then Harry continues to let them know that these people are dangerous and ruthless, that basically their friends and family will be in danger. How it's easier for him because he gets to wear a mask, but essentially for them that they don't have a mask. But Ben and Jonah actually have a plan for that. So later on, we see them getting ready to publish the story. Now, when they finally hit that publish button with the story reading, New York Kingpin, Wilson Fisk runs New York, but who runs Wilson Fisk? And it's listed by Ben Riley, which of course I like as a nice little touch. There's a story right now going on in the main 616 universe called Chasm Curse of Cain, and it's a fun series. But I'm wondering, like, are we gonna get a Ben Riley clone potentially in the future, or is this just a kind of a way to pay homage here, you know, which is kind of what Hitman is doing? Listen, I really like the story. What do you think about this one here? Check out our playlist made in the description for more Ultimate Spider-Man stories and other stories covering the new Ultimate Universe here, Ultimate Black Panther and the main Ultimate series. Please leave a like on this video here for the algorithm. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And as always, thank you so much for kicking it with Keepin' It Comic. Bye.